Let's begin our feature with Focus on Health Law. This is a presentation of attorney Kenneth Haber. The moderator here is attorney Ramesh Khurana from the Khurana Law Firm. On this set, attorney Khurana questions attorney Haber on how to avoid the FBI, OIG, and MFCU. Let's join these two attorneys.
This is Ramesh Khurana, attorney at law. I have my office in Maryland. I have a great pleasure in welcoming Mr. Kenneth Haber, who is the former Assistant United States Attorney, and he practices in Boyers, Maryland. Welcome, Mr. Haber, to our studios.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Haber, I know that the topic which is I'm going to discuss with you today is very close to your heart, and this is what you do day and night. So my question should seem very simple to you, but I will appreciate if you please give your answers in detail so that our audience is fully benefited. Now, of course, nobody wants to be contacted by the FBI and OIG office. You have worked in the OIG office.
Yes.
You probably know it, that nobody wanted to talk to you, unless you talk to somebody. So we have been hearing about the compliance programs. Of course, compliance programs are in every industry, in every field. So my question to you today is, what are some of the reasons that a compliance program has to be in place in a physician's office?
Well, the first reason is because it's the law now. They have to have them if they're participating in the Medicare program. Second reason is it's a good idea, even if you're not participating in the Medicare program, in order to make sure that you are operating your office in a fashion that's compliant with the rules of the insurance companies, the rules of the licensing board, and all the other professional responsibilities that you might have. Compliance programs are there not to trip you up, but actually to make sure that you don't screw up.
So, Mr. Haber, when we are talking about that compliance program has got to be in place because this is the law now. Now, when we are talking about the compliance program, now do you think it's a good idea for a physician to retain an experienced attorney to prepare the compliance program for his office, or how does this program grow?
Well, the doctor should have an experienced attorney. He should have experienced compliance officers in place. When I say compliance officers, I'm talking about people who have clinical, have billing experience, people who can answer questions of their own staff, can make sure if they're farming out some of their work, that the people that they're relying upon are doing it correctly, such as billing offices. Many billing offices are glad to take the money of the doctor, and they try to maximize the billings because of the fact they often work on a percentage basis. But the fact of the matter is that when something is amiss, the people are going to look at the doctor and not the billing office. And they're going to be coming after the doctor for repayment and possible prosecution. So the doctor has a big vested interest in making sure the people that he is hiring to do his billing, either in-house or subcontracted out, know what they're doing, that there's proper communications between his people and the people who are doing the billing, and that there's nothing falling through the cracks, because if it's falling through the cracks, it's falling on his face. He's going to be the one that's responsible.
Now, Ken, I think it will be a good idea if you can please explain, when we are talking about the compliance program in a physician office, what are the various steps starting from A to Z?
Well, a good compliance program will start out with a written document that provides guidance for everybody that's involved in implementing it. The compliance program is working or looking into the areas that most doctors are going to be involved in. Billing, testing, rental vendors of testing equipment, if they're hiring people to come in and do certain tests for them, referrals out, their relationships, leases, because you got anti-kickback statutes, you got Stark statutes, and you need somebody who knows all these things and make sure that you're in compliance. Once you're in compliance with the basic operations, then it's implementing your operations and making sure that you're not doing something that's wrong. And that's why it's important to have a good attorney that's a healthcare attorney, and somebody who has good clinical background, who can assist you in terms of proper documentation. Somebody who's got good background in terms of the billing issues that are involved, because that's important. And the billing documentation and the clinical documentation have to match. You have to have enough documentation to justify billing for 45 minutes, billing for 30 minutes, billing for 20 minutes, so that when somebody comes in, they look and they see what you have, they can say, yeah, that justified it based upon the diagnosis, the complexity of diagnosis, based upon the time involved, the patient taking all the information from the patient, the history, and everything else that goes into what's called a SOAP note, subjective to objective type of perceptions of the client, and the rest of it that's involved in making sure that the final product that comes out the door, is going to stand up in terms of you're doing things properly for the patient, so you don't have the licensing board on your neck, and B, that when you're billing to third parties, that they're not going to be on your neck because of the fact that you have all the documentation to justify those bills.
Now, Ken, that leads to another question. When we are talking about the compliance program in a physician office, so is it that every physician can have his or her own compliance program, or is there any standard template which has been provided for the physicians to seek guidance and so that they comply with major conditions of those templates?
Well, everybody should have their compliance program adjusted to their own needs. There are certain parameters that people who are in that type of business would have, and then they just can adjust them to the needs of that physician's office. However, you don't have to rebuild the wheel to do it. Now, obviously, if you're talking about a single physician office, it's going to be different than a 10 physician office. It's going to be different than a 100 physician office.
Yes.
So there's going to be these different type of adjustments to it, but the fact of the matter is certain basic concepts have to be taken care of in any of them, because whether it's a 1 physician office or a 100 physician office, the fact of the matter is that you're going to have to take care of these concepts and make sure that they're accounted for.
Okay, great. So you explained to us what is the basic compliance program. You did touch upon the implementation part. Now, would you like to say something additional about the implementation program of the compliance program?
Well, I would like to say that the physician has to take it as seriously as he takes his pension. The physician has to consider it as seriously as he takes his food and sustenance, because of the fact that if he doesn't do it right, he'll be losing his pension, he'll be losing his sustenance, because he could be losing his license. Physician, if he doesn't put proper documentation in place in his notes, can a year later not be able to justify why he did what he did to a particular patient that now has suing him. But if he had the proper documentation in place, he can explain it, and somebody reviewing that would say, yeah, I wouldn't necessarily have found that what the doctor put down, but I could see where he's coming from, and therefore it's a reasonable procedure that he implemented there. And if you don't have that in place, you can't explain it later on in a year, 2 years, whatever.
So when we are talking about the implementation of the compliance program and triggering its implementation and the consequences, and you said that when a doctor is sued, so do you think that all these issues become vital when a person is sued, or there is some ongoing monitoring system of the compliance program in the doctor's office?
It's ongoing. You have to continuously ensure that you are documenting things properly so that if you do get sued, or if the OIG or the FBI come knocking on your door, you can explain what you did and why you did it, and that there is a legitimate basis for it.
So the question is, when FBI and OIG offices get involved, so when there are some allegations of frauds, so you mean that when they are investigating allegations of frauds, so the most important document is going to be the compliance program document?
It'll be the documents generated based upon the compliance program. I had a situation where the Inspector General's office was investigating a client of mine. He had this astronomical billing, and they were wondering, how could you work, like 1,000,000 hours a day? Well, it wasn't 1,000,000 hours, but 1,000 hours a day or 100 hours a day. Well, the fact of the matter is he had a contract with a major medical center to provide care for the patients, and he had a company that he had doctors come in and provide the care, and he did the billings for all the services that were rendered. But he didn't know he needed a group number for his company, so he was billing it all under his number. What we did is we invited the OIG to come in and show them everything, obviously explain to them who all the doctors were that were involved, and it made explanation so that they could close their case out. But the fact of the matter is that here's somebody who, if he had the basic concept of knowing that you need a group number when you're running a number of doctors, you can bill under your number, but with a group number.
Okay. Now, Ken, we are left with 45 seconds, and I'm going to ask you a question. Of course, you explained to our audience what are the legal ramifications of not having the compliance program, especially when you are sued or when you are investigated. Now, my question is from ethical angle, whether there is any ethical responsibility for the doctors to keep the compliance program, or state medical board is going to monitor whether the compliance program is in place or not?
Well, there's an ethical consideration to make sure you provide proper services. Part of the compliance program is to assist you in documenting. One of the cardinal rules of medicine, if it's not in writing, it doesn't exist. So by having a compliance program, by knowing how to document everything properly, you can be complying with your ethical rules of documentation and justifying it. So if anyone looks after what you're doing after the fact, you're in a position to justify it. So there is an ethical rule or ethical basis for a compliance program, so you can show people that you are operating ethically.
Now, Cam, we come to the end of this session because the cameraman is already indicating that time is up. So, not the least, I would like to thank you very much for coming to our studios and answering questions about the compliance program and avoiding contact with the FBI and OIG. So, this is very interesting topic. I am pretty sure our audience is going to be benefited immensely from your presentation. And would you like to say any last word to the audience?
I'd just like to suggest that if you get anybody knocking at your door, that's in FBI, OIG, the Medicaid Fraud Unit, the Licensing Board, get yourself a good attorney. Don't just assume that everything's going to work out because you think that you're a good doctor.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.